Welcome everybody back to my channel. We are now in 2024. If some of you are feeling like the time has sped up exponentially, you are accurate. And that one, it is, the time is just flying by. And I want to point out a few things in this video today. And my intention in this video is to kind of recap 2023 and go into the new energy of 2024 with some specific topics I have in mind that have been coming up in my sessions and just in my consciousness in general. And I want to talk about all of that. And time is one of those things. And I think that as we embark in a higher density of consciousness and our dimensions are shifting around and we are becoming more aware of our let's say the energetic aspect of ourself and the less physical sense of our beings here in this reality, in this time and space, in these bodies that we're in. The time element of the matrix, you know, the time is a very specific anchor. So time is an anchor of the 3D that really holds us in place. It's almost like revolutions per minute. It's almost like what keeps us enveloped in this grid of energy of a lower density reality, and a lot comes with that. A lot of the 3D interference that I talked about in my book have a lot to do with time. I don't think that without the function of time, the things that the players or the dark ones or the powers that were, had they not, if they didn't have such a structure in place, we would not be able to be manipulated as easily. So the voice of God technology wouldn't work as well. All of the manipulation through the satellites and the towers and the things like that work really well in this grid that they've encased us in energetically, so to speak, somewhat disconnected from the quantum. Has a lot to do with time. So time slows everything down. Time is a manipulative factor in so many different ways. Their spell casting works with time and numbers. So time is very much associated with the 3D or the lower density reality or the matrix or the grid, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of different ways to determine it. So the fact that the time has been slowly speeding up for a while now, I mean, I would say years and years, is a good sign that we are moving, the grid is breaking down and we are kind of moving out of that. Because when we are tapping into our multidimensional ourselves, our light versions of ourselves, just the consciousness without the body, there is no time, there is no space. In the quantum, it's infinite possibilities. Time to when I speak with guides, they've always say to them, years can be moments. So it's not a lot for them to wait for something, because outside of the time matrix, it can be like a moment to them. Where in reality, we have to wait years, weeks, months, whatever it is, for certain things to occur. So the fact that we're moving out of a time, kind of this time continuum, this sequence of realities, is a really brilliant way to showcase the fact that we are going beyond the grid, and the grid is no longer keeping us captive anymore. So as the time speeds up, it's evidence basically that we are becoming more multidimensional. And the more multidimensional we are, the higher frequency we are, the higher frequency we can hold, and the higher frequency that we can hold, the less we can be controlled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these technologies don't work as well. So I wanted to, before I really get started and go into the nitty gritty of what I want to talk about today, there was a comment that somebody made on the presentation that I made at the Journey to Truth conference last May. It's available on my channel, and it's also available now to watch on the Journey to Truth channel as well. I believe it was a comment made on their channel, and I don't respond to negative comments ever. I'm not going to put energy towards it, but I do feel like it merited me to discuss it some instead of ignore it altogether, because I do have an answer for it. And the comment, well, what the person was talking about was, in my presentation, I talked about the black box technology. I believe that's what he was referring to, because he was talking about TVs. And I probably said in the conference at the end of my, when I finished talking about that particular topic of the mirror and the TV technology with the portals, etc., I must have said something like, you don't have to throw out your TVs, because I don't like to give negative information to the collective without some sort of a solution or something to give people power, to take their power back, and so the technology will cease to work. And so that was my purpose of writing the book, was to tell people what I have learned through my sessions, are the main components of the 3D interference and what that is and how it works. But how can we combat it? What can we do instead of being sitting ducks and just taking it? What are some things that we can do? So I don't believe that we necessarily have to get rid of all of the technology, for us to be free of that. So the comment was something like, why would you tell people not to get rid of your TVs? That seems irresponsible or something like that. It seems like you would need to get rid of the TVs in order to really be free of the manipulation of the black box technology, for example. I think there's something like that. And so yes, so to answer the question in a very black and white way, absolutely, in order to get rid of our risk of being manipulated through black box technology through the TVs, we would have to certainly get rid of the TVs. But what I'm trying to relay in my book and in these interviews that I do and in these messages that I give out, are empowering ways to combat it, so we don't have to get rid of the TVs. Because to be completely honest, if somebody wanted to be free of the satellites and the voice of God technology and the towers, I don't want to say certain words to get my channel taken down, but these certain towers with Wi-Fi and frequency and Bluetooth that are also emitted underground through more than just the towers, through satellites, through so many different portals. We also have the iPhone, or the smartwatches, the phones, the computers, the monitors, any technology you can imagine, the TVs, the computers, the laptops, all of those things, plus the mirrors, plus the just Wi-Fi in general, plus anything having to do with electronics in your car. It's not just the electric cars, it's the electric panels that are now controlling the gas vehicles. So there's an opportunity everywhere. So if somebody truly wanted to escape all the technologies, they would have to truly go off grid. So go somewhere way far away from it. And really, there isn't anywhere to go completely 100% away from it unless you're outside of the 3D. So you could, if you know of where the portals are to go into inner Earth or someplace else, you're pretty much going to be affected by it to some degree. So getting rid of the TV would only be like one sliver, one factor, one tiny thing that you can do. But if you're still using a phone, or you still have a laptop, or you still have mirrors in your home, or you're still using Bluetooth in some way, or you're still using electronics or microwaves in your house, your stove, your refrigerator, your car, even the electric panel in a gas vehicle, all of it. You're susceptible to and voice of God technology works for people who don't even have cell phones. And that's really running rampant right now with the emitting of suggestive programming and the negative affirmations and the negative emotions. So the frequencies that they're emitting that people are connecting with makes you feel depressed, makes you feel fatigued, makes you feel uneasy, makes you feel angry, agitated, ready to fight. All of these things that are suitable for their narrative to disconcert us or to manipulate us in some way to bring our vibration down. It doesn't have to come through a cell phone. So people walking around without a cell phone are still going to be at risk. So my point is not to sound negative, but my point is that it's not so easy to say, oh, just get rid of the TVs. Why would you be so irresponsible and not tell people to get rid of the TVs? Because you'd really have to do everything I just mentioned. And then you'd have to basically crawl in a hole somewhere and live thousands of miles away from technology. And that's a possibility. And I'm sure some people have, and some people have the ability to do that and are fine. But majority of people watching this are not going to do that. So my suggestions have always been, and hopefully was articulated well in the book, was, okay, now that we know that, how can we combat these negative frequencies and the negative interference that they continuously beam at us in various ways in order to lower our vibration, in order to disconnect us from the planet and the planet's grid. We want to be connected to the ley lines and the beautiful energy of Mother Gaia, because that's what grounds us. That's what centers and balances us. That's that's how we anchor to this planet in a very balanced way, because we have the light aspect of ourselves, the energetic part of us. But we also have the very primal aspect of ourselves, because we've chosen to be in these bodies. We've chosen to be human in this life, to contribute in some way or to learn something or both. And that aspect of ourselves is flesh and bone. And the way that the flesh and bone part of us grounds and centers and balances is by connecting to the earth. That's why we call it grounding. And there are so many different ways to do that. And people are so interested in communicating with their guides, their angels, learning about their star families, raising their frequency, and doing all of these things, but we're missing the mark here. The most important thing and the fundamental and the most foundational aspect of any of that, before you can even get started, is mastering how to ground. Because once you master how to ground, you are one with the planet. You are anchored in and grounded, and the lower chakras of your body, your root chakra, the sacral and the solar plexus chakras, are going to be balanced. And when those are balanced, then that primal fight or flight aspect of us that needs to feel secure, needs to feel supported, needs to feel like they have a solid foundation, really does start with those chakras being balanced. And the way you balance those chakras is to be grounded. The more grounded we are, the less our fight or flight instincts kick in. And let's be honest, this reality of 3D is very much driven by us being in fight or flight, so that we are disconnected. Those chakras are either blocked or spinning in a counterclockwise formation, so that they are disconcerted and not allowing the appropriate energy flow. And then it only amplifies the fear or the sadness or the feeling of not being supported or the feeling of not feeling secure, or all of those foundational frequencies and emotions that are very primal, but are also very important to the human aspect of ourselves. And the higher aspect of ourselves, where the starseeds, many of our starseeds that are very galactic or very tapped into our multidimensional self, don't need, our third eyes and our crown chakras are activated and they are open. So we are very multidimensional. We still need to ground as well. And one of the most challenging things that I've even noticed for the starseed children that I work with, the most common chakras that they have that trouble with or issues with are the lower chakras, because they are so multidimensional. They have such a high frequency. They are literally floating. They are just almost out of their body a lot of the time, and they have trouble anchoring in. One, because they don't like the bodies, they don't like the density, they don't like the feeling, so they kind of pop themselves out and they kind of just cruise out of their body as much as possible. But what happens when they do that, and us adults do that without realizing it, is our physical body responds in different ways, like stomach aches, digestive issues, headaches, nerve pain and nerve malfunction, and degenerative issues and things like that. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many ways that our bodies are trying to let us know that we are not grounded, we are not centered, we are not balanced, because our energetic aspect of ourselves is not fully embedded within the physical body. They're not merged together in a very balanced, harmonic way. And that starts with grounding. So try, and I'm not going to spend too much time in this video or any time really talking about grounding, because I have a whole book. My first book is about that. I have many interviews. So I've talked a lot about the different ways to ground and my favorite types of grounding, but you really want to focus on grounding as much as possible before anything else can occur. Once you master that, I honestly feel like that is the gateway for you to start to shift everything else around you. The way you feel, the way you look at things, the way you look at other people will shift and change. And we will be in less of this archaic, like fight or flight, competitive nature that fuels this grid that we're in, into a more ease, a space of neutrality, which is also one thing that I say a lot. Like a broken record, is try to remain neutral through all of these spiritual wars that are taking place, because the number one rule, I think, in the Dark One's playbook is to divide. And they have certain things that occur so that people, undoubtedly, or they start to fight with each other and they choose sides. Oh, you're wrong, or no, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's this division that is the catalyst to the wars that take place, not only physical wars between countries, but I'm talking wars between ourselves, wars between us and our friends, our families, our neighbors, wars on an inner scale as well as an outer scale. So it's just war within all of us, the collective in general. That's how they do it, through division. So if you can just try to keep yourself grounded as much as possible every single day, focusing on that, then when those things occur, you're less likely to have a reaction from a fear-based energetic perspective, and you'll be able to tap into more of a neutral space. And then you don't take sides and you look at things through a neutral perspective, where you're not angry or excited or happy or either end of the spectrum. Just remain neutral, and you will start to see your thoughts and your reactions change. And I think so. My point of this video, back to my point of 2023, kind of a recap of what's been going on. I think I talked about this in many interviews at the end of 2022, and I'm sticking to it now in the beginning of 2024. I believe 2023 will be the mark of a massive shift that occurred in our planet, in the third dimension, as we shift through this ascension period. And I know that a lot of things aren't out in the public for people to see in the way that we feel as humans we need to see it as proof. But there has been a massive awakening that has occurred through the years, but 2023, massive awakenings have occurred. People are doing the inner work, that the healing has taken place, or at least begun. People are mending relationships that were strained before, and then of course there are those that are having new strained relationships, and they're starting their journey from scratch, and that's okay. We're not coming from a place of judgment. The point being is that this year was about reflection, about healing, about taking yourself out of the repetitive loop that I talk about many times in many of my videos, getting out of the loop, getting out of the repetitive pattern of programming, and breaking free from that. And that in and of itself is enough for someone to embark in one year, let alone the healing that takes place with it, the finding yourself again, learning about who you truly are when you unravel all the layers of programming and figuring out who am I? What do I actually enjoy? What do I actually love? What do I actually want to learn? What are my triggers and why? And we start to look at it from a space of neutrality and a space of openness, as opposed to a space of judgment or a space of fear. And not anyone else. I'm not looking at my neighbor or my husband or anyone else. I'm looking at myself and saying, okay, what are the things that I really feel reflect who I am, and what are the things that I've taken on as ancestral kind of baggage, and what's manipulation, what's programming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And discerning that and having the ability to have the tenacity and the drive to continue that's a huge, it could take really long time to get through that. And I think that that's what 2023 was about. Yes, we started to, through those awakenings, some disclosure has taken place, and disclosure comes in on a spectrum. So it's not just disclosure where everybody in the world finds out at the same time. I've said this for years now. I think disclosure needs to come out in a way where it's almost in shifts, so we don't have mass chaos. We don't really want a civil war. And I think that's why things are playing out the way they are and taking longer than we would hope, because there are large groups of people waking up at different times, and then they're going through their period of, oh my gosh, disbelief, cognitive dissonance, acceptance, and then now they want to learn about it, and all these variations of their journey that they're experiencing, that's individual along with the collective. So there's a lot going on, but I think that 2023 was the year where a massive shift occurred in the collective. Many people were awakening and have continued to awaken throughout that year that we have just passed. The time has sped up exponentially. A lot of disclosure has occurred to the level of which many would like to see out on the mainstream news, maybe not to that degree, but I'm telling you, I have seen it through my sessions. I work with thousands of people, and they're telling me what they're seeing in their communities and their families. And when you compile it all together, to me, it's evidence and validation that there is a lot of movement taking place. We're just not going to see it when we sit on the couch, turn on the TV, and expect to hear about it on the mainstream news. It's not going to be that way. This is a new era that we're embarking in, and we are getting information in different ways. And the mainstream, obviously, is breaking down, and less and less people are trusting that source anyways, which is a good thing. So people are looking for their different avenues to get their information. And I think it's great to watch podcasts and certain people, just as long as you're using discernment and not taking every single thing that person says as, okay, that's absolute truth. You digest it. It goes through your veil of perception, and then you kind of dissect what you resonate with and what you don't, and you take little bits from this person, maybe little bits from that person, and then you also go and inside yourself, and you have your own, your own intuitive knowing and your own feeling about certain things, and then you kind of compile it. And that's why there is no one size fits all approach right now, and that's okay. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. So we finished up 2023, massive awakenings. More people than I've ever seen are even going back to their family members or friends and saying, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about this or that? So people are starting, the seeds that were planted years and years ago perhaps started sprouting in 2023. So sometimes things just take a little bit of time. So what does that mean for 2024? That means, as the way I interpret it, is that now we're going to start seeing the change occur slowly. The revolutions are shifting. We're going to see resets, but also there's going to be simultaneous breakdowns and collapses. But at the same time, pioneers and way showers coming in, and massive amounts of new ideas, and it's like a rebirth that's occurring. So there's going to be some negative. And I want to talk, actually, I had a dream the other day, and it took me a few days to sit with it because I wasn't sure how to interpret it. I had a dream that it wasn't lucid, but it was a very real dream in the sense that I really connected to it as if it was happening in that moment. It was so real. And I was having this experience in the dream where it wasn't linear necessarily. It was like almost like a knowing of all of these things that were occurring. And what was happening in the dream was that I was me, and I was not upset. I was concerned because through Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and different podcasts and venues and things like that, collectively, all the people I respect and many others that didn't even know who they were, and others that, I don't necessarily respect, but they were saying it. Basically, a large percentage of people, psychics and truthers and et cetera, were saying that they were sending out a massive warning to the collective that we needed to prepare because we were going into a dark period, and that we had lost the war, and humanity was going to go through a very dark and challenging period, and they were telling people to prepare. and it was an urgent message, be like, prepare for this. We didn't win the way we thought we were going to do, and and it was more to it, but I don't want to put any of those negative thoughts into, that's not the point of why I'm telling you guys the dream. There was more to it than that. But in the dream, I remember saying, like, even out loud as I'm watching people like on my phone doing videos, and I'm like, no, you're wrong. And I was saying, you're wrong. That's not right. Why are you guys saying that? What's going on? Who got to you? What's happening? And I was getting upset in the dream, like, this, you're wrong. And I'm like yelling. And then I started to just like panic in my dream. I'm like, why are they saying this? That's not true. And I realized that at the end of the dream, it was a manipulative, it's almost like a psychic attack that had occurred in my dream through something like a voice of God technology that kind of intersected into the astral, into my dream state. And I realized that almost like that whole concept or ideal or whatever was being emitted into the collective through the dream state. And I immediately called a few people to say, hey, did you have a similar dream like that? I think that they are emitting fear in the collective. And a few people said that they didn't have exactly the same dream, but in similar ways, metaphorically. So my interpretation of that dream was that the powers that were, the dark players, as I refer to them in my book, are really truly at the end of their manipulative rope, and they are really just trying to quickly use the technology that they have left or whatever's working as much as they can to blast or to emit as much negativity, doomsday type of stuff into the collective any way they can. And dreams are one of those ways that they can do that. And so I realized that that's what they were doing. That's what they are doing. So anybody that is having these irrational thoughts or have been pretty positive up until this point, and then suddenly they're like, oh, doomsday, something's wrong, and having a nervous feeling about it, you got to try to let that go. Because after I did a few meditations after that, and I did my own kind of grounding and did some running, things like that, immediately it was gone. It was like it left my field altogether, like a memory, like, oh, it was clearly some sort of manipulative psychic attack. I don't believe that's going to occur. In fact, I'm very positive. I have a very positive outlook. Now, are there going to be some negative things happening? Of course, I don't know that we can necessarily prevent everything that's negative from occurring, but I believe that we are on a positive trajectory. And I had a session recently with a woman who I learned about a new group that they call themselves the Supernovas. And this is another validation of why I'm feeling positive about where we're going in that 2024. Although we got to pull up our sleeves. We got work to do. We got to stay diligent. We got to keep our discernment up. We got to raise our vibration by becoming grounded, not fighting with each other, trying to remain as neutral as possible, but also positive. That I forgot my train of thought. Oh, the supernovas. That I have sessions with people that validate that feeling that I have, that positive feeling. Like, am I just on a different rainbow and like dreaming all of these things, trying to stay positive, but I'm wrong? I don't think that, but. So I had this session with a woman, and she's part of this group called the Supernovas, and they only come into this timeline, or not any timeline in any planet, because they're not from this universe, and they're not even from the same universe. And they're a collective group that are in the thousands, so not millions, so not that many of them, but in the thousands that come to planets, kind of like a supernova where the star explodes or it's at the end of its cycle, and it's dying. But in this case, they come in when there is a destructive planet or a destructive place is at the end of its cycle, and they're either going to kind of implode or implode. I think that's the word I'm thinking of. Or they are able to have a rebirth. create new energy, and almost like an explosion of new energy, new possibilities, new frequencies come through. Now we know that this has been occurring for hundreds of years. That, I mean, I talk about thousands of years. We've had starseeds coming in, and it only became a popular knowing until Dolores Cannon, bless her soul, talked about that, who I respect very much. And I learned so much from her, and she was a big catalyst for me to want to do hypnotherapy, which I used to do, and to do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now. But really condensed into the last last couple of generations, there are those that wait until the very end of the destruction, where it's right before that pivotal moment where everything breaks down, and then the newness, the rebuild needs to occur. Either the society or the place collapses, it folds in on itself, or it survives and then a newness is created, or in this case, the 3D collapses, and in essence, we are rebirthed into a higher density, or a higher density of consciousness, or into the fifth dimension and beyond. Because it doesn't just stop at the fifth dimension. We will go beyond the dimension of 5 of the fifth dimension. And many of the children that I work with, even some adults, are coming here from many other dimensions that are here to help raise the frequency. I mean, this isn't new information. We've talked about this a bunch, but this particular group, the supernovas, come at the very pivotal moment of the collapse so that they can help us prepare for the new energy to come through. They're very aquatic beings. They truly enjoy being in the water. They've been in many spiritual wars and battles, and they've helped many civilizations rebuild. But what I was told in this session is that they are very water bound. They love the water. The water rejuvenates them. They can also shift the vibration of the water on the planet that they're in, or the dimension that they're in, that they're trying to shift. So they tend to live near water, or be on the water, or have some sort of water career, or some sort of work that involves water. So the supernovas are here to help us evolve into the next era that we're walking into, the Great Awakening that I talked about in my book, this new beginning. And so I think 2024 is going to be a really, truly pivotal marking point of the continued collapse from 2023, and the rebuild beginning, the education. And we've seen evidence of that, even if we just specifically talk about education. When I started even thinking about education in my career years ago during the pandemic period, there was a very small percentage of my clients that were homeschooled. And then as the years progressed, it was, okay, I want to get out of I want to get out of my children out of the public school, but I'm thinking about homeschooling, but I'm not sure what to do. And then it jumped to like 75% of my clients were then homeschooling their children, to now it's like 90% of my clients are homeschooling their children. So, and 2023 was a year that I saw, it was like a clean sweep across. It was like almost every client I spoke with had either were just about to take their kids out, had taken them out recently, or they've been out for that past year. So now we're looking at 2024, and it's not about should I take my child out anymore. It's I've taken my child out. Now we're advocating for what we want the future to look like. That's a huge shift. I mean, in such a condensed period of all the years, of all the generations, even back when I was a child, and we complained about this and complained about that, nothing really changed. But look where we are now. Not only do we see the collapse occurring, but we are seeing the rebirth, the new energy, the new cycle, all at the same time, like really quickly. And that's just one example. I go into those things a little bit more in depth in my last book, and my new book, Courage to Change, is going to come out this year, and it's a continuation of the last. So just more and more things are coming out, and I'll talk about supernovas a little bit more and some other things. But the last thing I want to talk about, well, before I get there, 2025, I feel like it's just going to continue to the rebuilding is just going to continue to occur. So there's a lot of movement, 2023, 2024, 2025. I think we're just going to see so much change, so much vigilance, so much change, so much so many ways of pioneering new methods, new concepts. And that's when, but I believe that the group that I talked about that's been challenged the most, the teens through the 20s, that I call the crystal group for predominantly, that I said had nothing to do, that have been waiting around, feeling like they don't have a purpose. They're about to show everybody what they can do, and they're going to be activating them. They're going to become activated. They are going to become the way showers, the pioneers. So there's a lot a lot of people are going to be stepping up, doing a lot of things. So this is a really positive time coming right now and coming. So the more of us that can maintain that positive outlook, that excitement, but also remaining neutral during the turbulent periods, the faster we can do this as a collective, the faster we can physically manifest what has energetically been brewing, the last couple of years. The shift that has been occurring will now physically manifest in so many beautiful ways. And with that, the veil has been pretty thin. And one of the things that I've been seeing a lot in my sessions too, with the fact that the veil is so thin, are these bleed throughs. I've talked about it a few times. I didn't get into it too much in my last book, but I will be in this book, where these, what I call bleed throughs, where, because we are becoming more multidimensional, or we've always been, let's just correct myself here. We've always been multidimensional. We've always been healed. We've always been in God's image. But in the third dimension, in this reality of all the grid and the manipulation and the 3D interference, et cetera, we have forgotten. We have become, manipulated or programmed not to tap into the multidimensional aspect of ourselves. But because of this awakening, because of all the things that have occurred, and especially because of 2023, more people all over the world. They're that light bright that I talked about years ago, that people laughed at me for saying the light bright. I talked about how I see humanity as this light bright with small amounts of lights, turning on. But over time, just the whole board is just bright white light everywhere. And that's the metaphorical kind of energetic amplification of the ascension and the awakening of humanity and the collective just banding together. And the more awake we come, the higher our frequency, the brighter we become. And the more bright we are, the possibilities are infinite. But also when we have a high vibration, the 3D interference doesn't work. So you don't have to get rid of that TV. You don't have to get rid of all those things. You just stand in your power and say you don't consent, and those don't work. The voice of God technology will not work. Or you'll notice it and say, oh, this isn't me, and you what's the word? You discard it and say, no, I know I wouldn't think that way. And it doesn't work anymore. And I'm noticing that with my clients more and more. And you let me know in the comments. I've noticed it more and more in my clients. These things aren't working for them anymore. They're not working anymore. And they are almost like fighting through the programming. Like we are distorting their program. We are distorting their frequency emission. We are breaking it down. And the more of us that wake up, the more of us that are aware and open and tapping into our multidimensional aspect of ourselves, the veil is becoming more and more thin. And when the veil becomes more and more thin, more portals are opening and activating. There's a lot more vortexes of energy. I don't want to talk too much about the event, I'll call it, in Miami, because I don't want to get my channel taken down, because they don't want us talking about it right now. But what I will say is that a lot of people have been saying, blue beam. Yes, it could be that technology or others. But when I tapped into it, what I felt like immediately, it was just so clear to me, was that there's so many portals of energy and bleed throughs of different dimensions all over the place. And if there's heightened activity, especially in the cities, or certain hotspots where there's the technology or the towers or et cetera, or government facilities, et cetera, when there are these hotspots, there's the potential for these portals to open or the veil to become thin, and there are bleed throughs between dimensions. So imagine us wandering into a different dimension inadvertently, just because we were walking in the woods and we just happened to go through a portal and we're in another dimension. We didn't seek out to do it. It just occurred. That can also happen in the reverse. So there are, other interdimensional beings that I think inadvertently were in our reality, and that's why they were not threatening. And when they were being shot at, they just were able to teleport or move, and they didn't harm anyone. And a lot of eyewitnesses talked about how they were almost an observation, like seemingly interested in the people that they were seeing and watching them. But they were relatively or seemingly non-threatening. Now, as we get more information, we'll obviously know more. So this is just me tapping into it almost immediately. And I just felt like, oh, that this was an interdimensional kind of a bleed through situation. I don't think it was the technology that everyone's talking about. This is my opinion. Don't get mad at me. I don't want to debate anyone. I'm just giving my 2 cents. Because if it were, they wouldn't be trying to hide it so much, and they wouldn't have closed down airports, and there wouldn't be black helicopters everywhere. If they wanted us to be scared through that some sort of technology or a fake invasion, they would have broadcast it so that we would have a collective fear throughout. I mean, but if you see some of the what's the word? The testimonies of these people, I mean, I don't know. It felt like they were pretty shaken up. So I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like this was an example of some of those bleed-throughs. And I have done sessions recently. I'm not going to talk about right now, but I am putting it in the book, and I will be talking about it at the Journey to Truth conference coming up in May. That there are a lot of these occurrences that are happening similarly, and not these same beings, but Nephilim and other interdimensional beings that I've been made aware of. And I just think it's going to be happening more and more. So there's a spectrum of truths. So there's the dark truth, and then there's the other side of that, the other possibility of just what is happening in our reality as a result of all of the lights on the light bright, that I just said, and the grid breaking down, and now there's all these bleed throughs, and our vibrational frequencies are immense, and they are magnifying, and they are getting larger in diameter, and that's going to have a marked effect on the grid, and as well as the quantum frequency, the quantum grid around us, or not really a grid, but the quantum field around us. It's going to affect a lot of different things. So there's so many things happening that we are not able to necessarily see, but if you tap into your knowing, you'll feel it and on another level. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to talk about today, or if that was enough for one video. There's always a lot to talk about, and I haven't done videos in a while. I was taking a little bit of a break to spend time with family, so I'm slowly getting back into it. But I really wanted to touch base with everyone today, and at least talk about the things that I talked about, and just tell everybody to, try to remain as positive as possible. Don't let the hype of the negativity bring you down. Don't let it derail you from your inner knowing, where you know that things are going to improve. You know that there is a grand awakening occurring, but we are also in this grand awakening with beings and dark players that don't want the grand awakening to occur. So they're going to do everything they can to prevent it, to prolong the time, the duration, all of these things. So it's not just one answer for everything. There isn't just one truth. There are a lot of perspectives, and remember, our perspective changes based on our frequency and our emotional standpoint. So if I am very agitated or in a state of fear or deep worry, my perspective is going to be different than someone else that is more of in a neutral space. And I'm not saying that my neutral space is better than anyone else's. It's just, it could be different than what someone else is thinking. So always think about that when you dissect something that's going on, and pay attention to how you feel about it, and note how, or be mindful about how that can shift your perspective based on your emotions, even in that moment, and pay attention to that. And it's okay to feel any which way you want to feel or do feel based on your emotions and your experiences. But just being mindful of it so that it doesn't dictate everything. You know, the shadow side, I think I recommend everybody get to know your shadow side. I know my shadow side very well, because of all the stuff that I've been through and the dark period that I have gone through, that I very openly talk about, and about how much I hated people, hated humanity, and the animals were the only things that I respected. And it really took me a long time to get out of that darkness, because I became so friendly with my shadow side that I felt comfortable there. And I didn't know if I trusted anything outside of that. And it's been a journey for me and a struggle. But I don't shun that side of me. I don't regret anything that I've ever done or said necessarily, because I know that it's shaped me into the person I am today. And all of those perspectives, if I put the good and the bad and the indifferent and all of those experiences and all the perspectives that I have had together, you know, that's where the wisdom comes through. And I don't shy away from that. And sometimes I do get upset because of things that happened to me in my life, intimately, like my personal life, that's not publicly, you know, seen by all of you. And there are days where the shadow side takes over and I react in a way that I am embarrassed about later. And I have to really think about why I reacted that way. You know, the universe, your surroundings are a mirror. You know, that it's going to project what it is that you truly need to see and what you need to heal in that moment, which is why what I see in front of me can be completely different than the person next to me, because they may not need to learn or see it in the way that I do. So we have to try to have compassion for each other and an understanding that we are truly walking in very different shoes, and the shoes can change every single day based on what we need to learn, based on what we learned the day before or didn't learn, based on setbacks, based on so many different factors that we'll never be able to understand what the person fully understand what the person next to us is going through. Therefore, we shouldn't judge them. We can have empathy. And, you know, some people have a lot more empathy than others. And as I noticed that as I embraced my light side and learned from my dark side, my shadow side, the empathy came pouring out of me. And yes, my first son was the catalyst of that, opened up my heart because it was so closed off. I noticed that the empathy just oozed, and now I just feel everything for everyone. And sometimes that can be very overwhelming. So we want to practice our spiritual boundaries as well as our physical boundaries. But the more you have spiritual boundaries, the more you practice that and you create energetic boundaries, I promise you, it will reinforce the physical boundaries in a way that no one will mess with you, because they will feel that you can't be messed with. They will just know, I cannot cross that line, because the boundaries, the energetic boundary is so strong and just so enforced by integrity and your knowing and your ability to say, I do not consent, and to truly believe that, then there's no physical boundary that is more powerful than that. I promise everybody watching this. So with all of that, I hope that this information today has found all of you well, and it makes sense to some degree. And you know, we're all in this together as much as possible. And those that fight against it, that's their choice. But the community that we're building is such a beautiful, beautiful. It's just so beautiful to have the support that we're all finding in the last few years that many of us have never had. I am going to be speaking at the Journey to Truth conference in May. For my second time, I will be going over so many different things that are in my new book, also New Earth Children. I'm going to talk about animals and so many other things. So if you haven't purchased a ticket yet, I encourage you to go. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way for all of us to hang out, get to know each other, and be in person. Now, if you can't make it in person, there is a virtual live stream option, which is just as good. I mean, I've been watching some of the replays of the other speakers, and the quality of the presentation, like the audio, and it's almost like you're there anyway. So it's really great. It's worth it. So I hope to see you guys there. yeah, until next time, I will be doing some more 3D interference videos coming up, and a few other tidbits. So I hope to see all of you guys soon, and take care of yourselves. And until next time, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.